Welcome to the third annual statewide energy efficiency best practices forum. My name's Pat Stoner. I'm going to be the host for today. I think a lot of you know me from the work I've been doing. Actually, today's my 19th anniversary at the Local Government Commission. So pretty good. Anyhow, so my new position is statewide local government energy efficiency best practices coordinator. It was created by the PUC a couple of years ago with the 2010 to 2012 energy efficiency decision. And I'm working on, as a lot of you know, probably best practices case studies. And there's a flyer in your packet that tells you how to find those at the website that I have. I'm also, let's see. My job is basically focused on the long-term energy efficiency strategic plan that the PUC adopted in 2008 as well. So a lot of the work that we're doing here, the partners are doing, is related to that as well. So I'm doing a newsletter, which I've been doing since 1998 for local governments on energy efficiency matters that are interesting to them in California. I do email alerts, and that's probably where most of you know me from. I get a lot of, aha, you're Pat Stoners when they meet me because they've gotten my emails for probably about 12 years, but have never met me in person. And then I have my website as well. So that's me. The forum is put on by the Local Government Commission as part of their statewide energy efficiency collaborative work. And the SEEC, you can see here, the SEEC collaborative includes ICLEI, Institute for Local Government, the 4 Investor-Owned Utilities, and Local Government Commission. And the purpose of the forum is to get you together to network with each other, to share your successes, to potentially identify some coordinating opportunities between partners, and partners meaning the local government partners and the utilities and everyone else. To publicize accomplishments, so we're going to be doing some of that over the day today, and discuss some of the challenges that you've met doing your work. So if you haven't found the restrooms, when you came down this long hall, if you go back out that hall, before you make the first dog leg to the right, I used to play golf, there are the restrooms right there, and that's where you're going to find the restrooms. If you have a cell phone that you need to stay connected with, please put it on mute or on vibrate or something like that. And then if you need to answer the call, try to take that out in the hall. The PowerPoints are going to be available online, as well as a lot of the reporting back that we did yesterday, if you were here for the partners meeting. And today there will be some more reporting back as well. Those that information will be available on the LGC SEEC website in about a week or so, pretty soon. You'll get an email when that happens, so you can download all that stuff from our website. And there will also be a survey sent out after probably tomorrow. We usually do them pretty quick. Trying to get your responses to how well the day went today, if you attended yesterday. What you thought about that, in order to make these events in the future more beneficial to you. We want to make sure what you're getting out of this, what you really want to get. We're going to be hearing from some welcoming people, and we're kind of waiting for a state senator who's not quite here yet, but we're going to skip over him and fit him in as soon as he arrives. Then we're going to hear from some people from the state to talk about. Oh, good, he's here. To talk about. The state perspective on what's going on with energy and local governments in the future and the role of local governments. We're going to have some breakout sessions after that this morning, and you could choose one of 3 that are happening. We're going to have some recognition of Beacon Award participants after that in the afternoon. More breakout sessions, and then a closing session with somebody from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. So it should be a very good day for everybody, we hope. And we're looking forward to your participation and everything. So, first, we have Senator Ted Lieu.
Give him a break. He just sat
down. Oh, you want to? Okay. We're going to start with Hal then. Hal Snyder is Vice President of Customer Solutions for Southern California Gas Company and San Diego Gas and Electric. He oversees customer programs promoting energy efficiency, sustainability, low-income assistance, and the development of emerging technologies, including clean transportation, distributed energy, in-home services, and biofuels. So, Hal.
Very good. Thank you very much. Welcome. You know, your introduction just gave my speech. So, but with that said, you know, today's a great day. Today is a day of collaboration and partnerships and education. And hopefully you all will see on the agenda that it is a day that you could recognize that you will be able to not only take something away, but you could also provide to us any feedback, any guidance you have to help us partner with you to really do what the state recognizes its number one most efficient way to satisfy a lot of energy policies, and that is energy efficiency. And you have, as partners, as government partners, you have the access and you are the conduit to so many people, to so many businesses, to so many residences that, you know, the partnership with your utilities is so critical. And I get to speak twice as long as Gene because I have two names up here. I am a vice president for SDG&E and SoCal Gas, and I'm excited to be here. Because, you know, it is a very exciting time in the energy business. I just came away from a series of meetings where Mary Nichols spoke. Mary Nichols is the chair of the California Air Resource Board, and she mentioned, and I'm a gas guy and an electric guy, but she mentioned something that is so true, that these new finds of natural gas is really a game changer. You now have a resource in America that is abundant, that is cheap, that is green, and is being produced and found in our United States. So it is a very big game changer in how we utilize natural gas, our natural gas, in the most efficient way possible. And that's what today's all about, is how do we partner with our partners with Edison, how do we partner with our governments, to really make sure that our energy is being used as efficiently, as productively as we possibly can. But I would like to talk a little bit about the gas company and what we're doing that you may not know about. We right now are administering the largest solar water heating in combined with natural gas program than we've ever administered before. I encourage you to all recognize what that solar water heating program is, so you could understand it and be able to provide this information to your constituents and your customers. The natural gas company in the solar water heating business is kind of a great connection. And that's why I love being up here with Edison, because this is not about picking winners. This is about developing an integrated energy set of portfolio solutions that is the best for our customers. A couple other things about the gas company. You know, the cleanest, by the way, do you know the cleanest for the last 6 years light-duty car that has been recognized by the Federal Institute of Automotive? What's the cleanest car on the road today? It's a question for you to get you going here. The Honda Civic, the natural gas Honda Civic. The natural gas Honda Civic. Well, let me tell you, the CARB has recently, in their low-carbon fuel standards, has also done a full rack-up on the most efficient, clean ways of transportation. So obviously, I'm in the natural gas vehicle business also, and I want to promote natural gas vehicles. A natural gas Civic is a product that we could buy today to transport ourselves and our families in the cleanest, greenest way. But also biofuels. If you look at the low-carbon fuel standards, biofuels is really even cleaner than electricity. It's cleaner than other resources. So the Southern California Gas Company has an application in before the California Public Utilities Commission as we speak to support our customers, our farms who are developing waste, our wastewater treatment facilities, and other customers that have waste that can be converted to energy, that can be converted to methane. We are also involved, we would like to get involved in that. That's exciting. So as you start taking waste to energy to help in transportation, you're really solving the region's biggest NOx, nitric oxide issues, the climate issues. And that's 87% of the NOx in our region is related to transportation. And we think the gas company has solutions to support reducing NOx out of the air, which is a great opportunity. Last thing I want to talk about is our smart meters. Another opportunity for all of you to see how you could support the use of technology in reducing energy. We will be installing 6 million smart meters over the next 5 years. These are meters to help our customers understand their energy use, to control their energy use, and manage their energy use. But it's going to take a lot of education, and it's going to take a lot of collaboration to ensure that this technology is utilized by our customers across the board to realize the benefits that's available to them. So, like I started to say, this is an exciting time in the energy business. Things are changing, paradigms are changing, and I just can't wait to work with all of you and see all of you today and help us, help you, help us, and become more efficient in how we use energy, not only in our region, but across the nation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Hal. Now we have Senator Liu. Senator Liu chairs the Senate Labor Committee and represents nearly 1 million people in the Senate District 28, which includes the city of Carson, El Segundo, Hermosa Beach, Lomita, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, and Torrance, and portions of Long Beach, Los Angeles, and San Pedro. So, Senator Liu.
Great, thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I thank all of you for being here. Before I was in the legislature, I was a commissioner on the Torrance Environmental Quality Commission, and then I was in Torrance City Council. And I'm very aware that often what the state does is we set standards, but it's really local government and local commissions and all the nonprofits and utilities that work with local government that actually gets the things actually done. And so thank you for being here. And I'll tell you a little bit about the standards we've set and what's going on at the state level, and maybe tell you what I think is going to happen hopefully in the next 5-10 years in California. So as you know, we recently passed the RPS standards in the state, and the utilities have now got to go to 33% by 2020. And it's a high mandate. I think they can meet it, and I commend them for putting in all their best efforts to do that. And the speaker before me mentioned natural gas, and that is a very exciting area. It's been said that the U.S. can be the Saudi Arabia of natural gas because we have so much of it. And it'll be interesting to see how that shapes our energy future in the years to come. But there are different ways, right, to become energy efficient. One is simply to change your source of fuels. Another is to reduce demand. I think we need to conserve as well, and it's not going to be a single silver bullet. It'll be a matrix of different strategies. One thing that's always interested me are greening buildings. And as some of you may know, buildings account for about 40% of energy use, which is basically the entire transportation sector combined. And it's buildings like this one. And if you think about it, none of your cars are moving right now. They're parked. But we're running electricity through this room, and buildings like this are often generating electricity 24 hours a day. And if you could green buildings, it's a really easy way to reduce energy. And it's because it doesn't require a lot of behavior change. So let's say we want to make a hydrogen car. Well, you got to get manufacturers to design it and then to build it. Then you got to get consumers to buy it. Then you have to get gas stations to install these hydrogen pumps. It's a really large behavior change you have to put in the population. But if this building here had solar panels, none of you would know about it, nor would you care. It doesn't change your lifestyle. You walk into this room. If this building had, LEED certified wood, if it had different sorts of building materials, it doesn't affect you, but it could consume a lot less energy. And so, to me, it's sort of the low-hanging fruit of energy use. If we could just start greening buildings, it would be very helpful. I know some local governments have already started doing that, putting in ordinances. When I was in the state assembly, I got the first bill in the nation to the governor at the time, which would have mandated that any building over 50,000 square feet had to meet the LEED's gold standard. Unfortunately, the governor at the time did not sign it. But fortunately, in its place, in his veto message, he said, all right, we're not going to do this, but I am going to put in that the Building Standards Commission has to put in green building codes. And that's what the Building Standards Commission started to do. And they now have this set of green building codes, and then they're slowly taking parts of those codes and then making them mandatory. So eventually we'll get there. And California has been a leader, as you know, in energy conservation across the state, especially in our building codes, and we can always get better. But local government has a big role in that because local governments can exceed what the Building Standards Commission wants to do. Another area that has interested me is simply the issue of climate change adaptation. It's very clear to me that we have produced enough global warming gases that even if we just became dark tomorrow and became totally uncivilized, our temperature is still going to heat up in the next 100 years. So in addition to reducing carbon, I think we have to shift to a view of it's just going to happen. How are we going to adapt to that? How do we make it so that we can better respond to a hotter Earth? One of the things that we know that happens is sea level rises. We're going to have additional extreme weather events. So I've got a bill, Senate Bill 1066, that the California Coastal Commission has now endorsed, that the Nature Conservancy is sponsoring. And what it says is, it says to the Coastal Conservancy, we're going to let you start funding projects for climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. And the thought is that as we start heating up, the Coastal Conservancy can start giving grants out to a lot of the communities to deal with climate change and how to adapt to that. And that's on the Assembly floor. Hopefully it'll get to the governor for a signature this year. And then another issue I've worked on is how do we incentivize people to drive more alternative fuel cars. So I twice extended the carpool lane for folks who want to drive solo if they got a car that meets those standards. We're trying to figure out how to do it when we put in the toll lane on the 110. It is a federal government project, so I think there's certain restrictions on what we can do with that. But once the federal government funding ends, then we can look, I think, at once again letting alternative fuel cars to ride in that lane on the 110. You know, the Honda Natural Gas Civic, it was mentioned before, it's a good car. I'm not exactly sure why no other manufacturer actually makes another natural gas car for consumers, but a lot of them do make it for fleets, for governments, for businesses, and those things are expanding, which is why when I was in the legislature, I also carried a bill that the governor actually did sign. And it said something pretty simple. It said, you know, if the state of California is going to buy an alternative fuel car, guess what? We got to fuel it with alternative fuels. Because at the time, the government was buying all these flex fuel cars that either could run on ethanol or on regular gas. And they were buying it so they could tell the public, hey, we've got this huge fleet of alternative fuel cars. And then when you looked at it, they were fueling them with regular gas, which was even worse than if they just had bought a normal car and fueled it with natural gas, or with regular gas. So my bill now requires the state not only to buy more alternative fuel cars, but then to actually fuel it with alternative fuels. Hopefully local governments are not making the mistakes of what the state was doing. In terms of cap and trade, is now starting to be implemented by the California Air Resources Board. It is one of the most complex cap and trades I think the world has ever seen. And one reason is because we've learned from the mistakes of other countries and other jurisdictions, and they're going to try to learn from that and make it very robust and make it better. And the government, Governor Brown, in fact, has scored $500 million just for this year alone from cap and trade. And we think that as this program takes off, it will bring additional revenues to the state that can be used for environmental and climate projects. And then let me talk a little bit about biomethane. There is an issue now in the state where what happened was after we passed the RPS standards, I think no one really thought about this issue of biomethane, but regardless of where you stand on it and what you think about it, as of January 1st of this year, biomethane was allowed to be counted for the RPS standards for utilities. The Energy Commission on March 28th of this year said, okay, hold on, we're going to put a moratorium on this because we didn't think about this, we didn't really intend this to happen, so any contracts after March 28th, if you're going to do biomethane, you can't count it for the RPS standards. But now there's this time period between January 1st and March 28th where contracts were entered into that allowed biomethane to be counted for RPS standards. There is a bill now to retroactively take the March 28th date, move it back to January 1st, and basically say to all those entities that signed these contracts, you're out of luck. I am going to oppose that bill. I think it makes no sense. Government can't retroactively take away something that we promised. So my hope is that that bill doesn't make it through the legislature, but there is that issue right now with biomethane and whether we should count it for the RPS standards. With that, I am happy to answer any questions that any of you may have, and look forward to all of you learning how to make California a greener place to live. So thanks a lot for inviting me.
Hello? Does anybody have? Sorry. Does anybody have any questions for the senator?
Yes, sir.
Peter.
About the biomethane, so what were the concerns that were being discussed there?
So on March 28th of this year, the Energy Commission basically said, if you're going to sign more contracts for biomethane, we're not going to count them for RPS standards. Between January 1st and March 28th, a bunch of contracts were entered into on the understanding that the state was going to count them for RPS standards. And my view is you can't retroactively go back and tell those contracting parties that we didn't mean what we said. And so I'm fine with upholding the Energy Commission's decision on March 28th going forward. I'm not fine with those 3 months of changing what the parties believe was the state of the law. So that's sort of the issue.
The fuel itself, or what's the issue with the biomethane? Is it the source it's coming from? Is it landfill gas issue, or?
So it's sort of complicated. There's different issues. One is whether it's in-state or out-of-state generated. Another does have to do with some folks' view that it's potentially toxic because of where it's coming from. I happen to generally support it, but those are sort of some of the policy considerations why people oppose it. So.
Yeah, I think there's a concern that people might start sending compostable materials to the landfill in order to generate methane instead of composting them, and so then you get these bioreactor landfills where that's not really the direction we might be going in.
So there are, I believe there are valid policy concerns. To me, it's just a process issue. If we sort of basically said, on January 1st of this year, we're going to count it, and then on March 28th, we say, well, going forward, we're not going to count it, that's fine. I just believe in those 3 months, we can't retroactively change our minds. So.
California has significant natural gas that could be harvested through a more aggressive program. What steps are being taken to make sure we don't lose that opportunity?
No, that's a good question. I will look into it. I think the governor's administration is very aware of the natural gas issue, and they're starting to set out regulations and standards to folks who want to explore it and do more with it. I think a lot of the private entities are very interested in trying to get more access to natural gas. So I will look at that issue and let you all know. I don't know exactly what incentives there are for that right now.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Very much. And next, we have Gene Rodriguez from Southern California Edison. He's the Director of Customer Energy Efficiency and Solar, overseeing the energy efficiency, low-income rate assistance, California Solar Initiative, and self-generation incentive programs. And the US EPA recently recognized him as the Individual Leadership Award recipient at the 2012 Climate Leadership Award. So please, Gene.
Well, good morning, everybody. It says on your agenda, Pat told you that I'm here to welcome you on behalf of Southern California Edison. That is not what I'm going to do. Instead, I'm going to welcome you on behalf of 2 other people. When I first arrived this morning, I showed up and grabbed a Diet Coke from the little gift shop that's right there. Using Pat terms, it's a dog leg left, and then a little chipping iron in, and blah, blah, blah. But long story short, inside there's this really nice lady called Tatiana. And Tatiana asked me, well, what are you guys here to do? And I said, this is a collaborative of local governments from all across California, the utilities, and other people, nonprofits, who are interested in either climate or good economic policy to figure out what we can do to help customers use less energy. And she said, that's good. Welcome. And so I said, well, thank you very much. I'm going to tell the people in there that you said welcome. And then she said, no, I'm serious. That's good. Well, I was serious too. So I'm bringing you Tatiana's welcome. But I'm bringing you that because it tells you something about the importance of the work you're doing. Now, I didn't have a lot of time to chat with her, so I don't know if Tatiana is just impressed by local government officials who are concerned enough about their bills, the pocketbook bills that people have to pay to people like Hal and my company, so that they want good government to mean working together to find ways to reduce costs. I don't know if that's her concern. I don't know if Tatiana, like many of us in this room, actually do believe that global warming is a real man-made influenced impact. And I trust you, I just came back from DC last night. There are more and more believers every single moment of the day that climate change is something we have an obligation to work together to address. I don't know that. I don't know whether Tatiana thinks that clean energy is a sustainable means to build green jobs that really make a difference in the world. I don't know. All I know is that she thinks that the work that we're doing here today in this collaborative is important. And I know that each and every one of us in this room agree with that. So let's do Tatiana well. Let's make sure that when we're in this room today, let's make sure that what we are looking at is working on a collaborative that makes a difference. And now to the make a difference part. As I said, I just got back from DC, so that's why I have like these bags under my eyes, and I'm going to be a little bit rambly this morning because I'm a little tired. But the bottom line, I also bring welcome from the US EPA, DOE, and most importantly, my ICLEI friends will know, the mayor of North Little Rock, Arkansas. The little chatter of giggles in the crowd tell me you know him. What is his name? His name escapes me now. Doesn't really matter. Number one, I didn't know Little Rock was big enough to have a North Little Rock that has its own mayor. Number two, I met a guy who was like the epitome of what you would think the charming kind of Arkansas mayor would be. He started everything else with a kind of an aw shucks story. But his aw shucks stories all came to a point. The meeting we were at together, the meeting ICLEI was representing, and I was there in my capacity as Edison and some other capacities as well, was part of what we call the State and Local Government Energy Efficiency Action Network. What is this? It is the US EPA and DOE bringing together people from all across the country, from every sector of the economy, to figure out how energy efficiency could be better implemented across the United States. And the two things that are the most important, the two things that create the reason why the mayor of North Little Rock is part of this executive committee looking into this stuff, are this. Number one, the notion is that let's not wait for the federal government to rescue us, for whatever reasons, from bad engineering, bad efficiency. Let's make it happen at the state and local level. You're going to hear from a panel of folks from the state of California right now, next, I think, on the agenda, isn't that right, Pat? Who will be telling you the policies that we're using in California to make that happen. The second was what this mayor said at that meeting that I think struck gold with everyone there. This is not, he said, a state and local government energy efficiency action network. It's a state and local government implementation network. If we want to make a difference, whether it's just to help the economics of the customers and the constituents that you serve, or if it's for environmental reasons, or if it's for job creations, or if you just happen to be patriotic enough to think that this country should have the most efficient economy in the world, doesn't really matter. It's about implementation. So I will close with what I started with and what Pat started with. The word collaborative is in the name telling us what our mission is. The word collaborative is what we have to live up to. So for those of you who work for Southern California Edison in this room, your orders for the day are to be collaborative. Find ways to work together with the people in this room to make a difference. Find ways to implement more energy efficiency in the homes, businesses, and municipal facilities of every local government across California. So with that, welcome from Tatiana, welcome from the State Energy Efficiency and Local Government Action Plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. And you know, Gene, what you mentioned, the North Little Rock Mayor, LGC hosts a national conference for like the last 12 years or so, New Partners for Smart Growth, and this year it was in San Diego, and the most engaging speaker that we had at that conference was the mayor of Oklahoma City. He was just amazing. So we sometimes dismiss this at Central State of the country, but we shouldn't. Okay, well, I guess you guys can go. Thanks very much.
So that welcome everybody.
Okay, next we're going to hear from some people from state. They're going to be talking about policies and programs that affect local governments and their perspective on the role of local governments helping the state to meet their energy and climate goals. Jean is Governor Brown's special advisor for efficiency at the California Public Utilities Commission. Previously, she was Governor Schwarzenegger's clean energy advisor, launching the California Solar Initiative and guiding California's long-term energy efficiency strategic plan, which we're going to be talking about. Jean has a long career working on clean energy issues, sustainable development, and climate mitigation, from roles in government policy and strategy to utility and government program delivery in the U.S. and internationally. And I know she also used to work for the city of Oakland. And she has degrees from Dartmouth College and UC Berkeley. So please welcome Jean Clinton.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm better dressed than I was yesterday. For those of you who are here, I was hunkering down on the sidelines, trying to sort of get the pulse of local governments in California today. So thank you for having me here. I've worked actually for cities 3 times in my career. I worked for the city of New York, dealing with abandoned housing. I worked for the city of Palo Alto, running the solar and efficiency programs for their municipal utility. Which is an unusual municipal utility because it has electric, gas, water, and sewer services all in one municipal entity. And then for the City of Oakland as the Sustainable Development Coordinator, working not only on energy efficiency issues, but with ICLEI on climate action. So I feel like I've got a fair amount of my career in local government. What I'm going to do is talk from 2 perspectives. I have the pleasure of being both the advisor to the governor and an advisor inside the Public Utilities Commission. So I get to play in 2 worlds simultaneously. Some days that's more challenging than others. But today I'm going to focus on both issues, and I think they're totally aligned. So I think about half of you were here yesterday, and one of the themes of conversation was about a number of activities that actually the Public Utilities Commission has a hand in financially ensuring support for. And the new regional energy networks, we've had 4 proposals on that came in on Monday. The Marin Community Choice Aggregation proposal for energy efficiency, proposals from the utilities to continue funding for successful ARA initiated programs, and the sort of mandate that the local government partnerships seek to expand and reinforce deep energy retrofits. All of that is coming from policy direction at the Public Utilities Commission. 2 more changes that are on the horizon. One is for starting next year, the Energy Upgrade California brand is being embraced as sort of the universal brand for retrofit in California, not only for residential buildings, but for non-residential buildings. And there will be new proposals coming in August 3rd for how to do statewide marketing, education, and outreach consistent with this message. So I expect that many folks here in the room will be paying attention to that also. Now let me put on my other hat. And the message from Governor Brown is that he is, as you know, has some history in local government himself, as being the mayor of Oakland. He is keenly interested in exploring the roles and functions that local governments can play in delivering energy efficiency and green and climate action solutions, starting from the local level, but clearly embracing best practice and good models and extending that and taking it to scale. And I think the emphasis there is we not only want to get to scale, we need to get to scale. So even if we are piloting great activities, what we have to do is roll that out across all of California, then extend it and share it with our brethren states and provinces on the West Coast through the Pacific Coast Collaborative, which we're actively engaged with Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia to see how many of our energy efficiency and green policies we can sort of embrace regionally to help drive an economic engine here on the West Coast. And also, we're looking for what I would call game-changing tools and mechanisms. So how do we go beyond the 1 or 2% market penetration a year? How do we get to 5 and 10% market penetration a year? One of the sort of back-of-the-envelope calculations that I've done in recent years is to say we have an opportunity to commit about $50 billion to energy retrofit of buildings in California, well, buildings and industry, $50 billion. And at the rate we're going, it's about $0.5 to $1 billion a year now. You know, we've got to scale that up about 4 or 5-fold, and that's what we're looking for is how do we get to scale. One of the ways to scale up capital commitment and investment is by bringing new financing tools into the marketplace beyond what we've had conventionally. In the residential sector, we've had home equity loans and credit cards, neither one of which has proven ideal for doing retrofits. And in the commercial sector, we have very, very complicated ownership and investment structures and REITs, real estate investment trusts, and all kinds of prohibitions on a building taking on more debt. And so we have to get very creative into energy services agreements and things that don't count as loans or don't count as debt. If we're going to be able to get commercial buildings to make these improvements and not violate the underlying mortgage premises that they have. So the PUC in May issued a major guidance decision. I think many of you are familiar with it. But the premises were that in order to get to scale, we actually need to move away from utility ratepayer-funded direct loans, and we need to mobilize private capital. We need to mobilize capital from markets. That means it's going to have an interest rate because you don't get free money from capital markets. But what we need to do is we need to insert this capital into loan and energy service agreements that spread out the repayments over a period of time that exceeds the expected life of the efficiency improvements. So if we can get loans to change from maybe a 5-year home equity loan to a 10-year loan, or a commercial building owner moving away from needing a 1 or 2 year payback to something that they pay back on their utility bills, and as long as they have a positive cash flow, it'll work. These are the kinds of changes, game-changing interventions we need. I would say the emphasis here is this is another tool in the arsenal that we need. It's not, as someone said yesterday, it is not a silver bullet, but it is one more critical tool we need to mobilize markets and to bring not just capital, but to bring new innovative business models, to have new kinds of companies materialize who are prepared to get their arms around these kinds of energy efficiency and or solar and distributed generation solutions and bring those to millions and millions of buildings and homes across the state. So one thing I would say that we think we need to do in order to get all of this mobilized is we're going to have a fair amount of standardization of documents, of information, of data, because when a Citibank or a Wells Fargo or somebody else on Wall Street is thinking about putting money into this space, they want to know that there's a minimum of $100 million a year of transactions. And if it's not that scale, they don't want to be interested. They don't expect we have to be there the first year, but we have to get there within a few years so that, you know, they're willing to sort of prime the pump, but that's what we're going to need to do. So this is some of what's driving some of the decisions that you see coming out of the Public Utilities Commission. We've directed that there be 4 new financing products to be designed and proposed by fall and launched as pilots in the first quarter of next year. It's very fast in PUC and utility worlds. But we think that there are some good models out there already. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Very briefly, the 4 products are in the single-family housing market, a credit enhancement or loan guarantee program. That does not mean interest rate write-downs. It means credit support where, by absorbing some of the risk, the private capital is willing to make the interest rates lower. In the multifamily space, which is a unique and challenging space, we think we're going to need a combination of the credit enhancement and some sort of tied to the meter repayment program where the tenants and occupants of the building can help repay the capital loans that otherwise are the obligation of the owner. That's going to get challenging. There are some places in the United States that are doing something called tariff-based loans or tied to the meter. We have to figure this out, but quite frankly, if we don't figure it out, we probably will not make progress in the multifamily market, which is roughly about a third of all the residential space in California. And I don't think we can afford to just walk away from that. The 2 other opportunities for financing products are credit enhancement for small businesses who typically have trouble qualifying for loans because it's hard to figure out the sort of business risk for somebody, a banker loan for that entity. And the last one, and the one that potentially could touch all of the non-residential buildings, both municipal and private, is an on-bill repayment for loans that originated by entities other than utilities to have the benefit of paying back each month on the utility bill the energy improvement loan. So this is a lot to put on the plate all at once. We're confident that this will be getting off the ground August 1st as directed by the PUC with experts in hand. Now let me move on to 2 other areas briefly. We are in the midst of adopting a decision probably in the next 2 weeks to guide the low-income energy efficiency programs in California. This has been very, very complicated because we have multiple objectives that we're trying to reach. We want to help people be comfortable. We want to reduce the energy cost burden to households. And we also want to save energy. And doing that all at once in situations where most of the households actually don't own the homes that they live in makes it quite complicated. So I think we're going to make some major progress on the multifamily side of the low-income market, one that has not been as actively represented in our low-income programs in the past. So I think that's a major accomplishment. And as we move forward, we're going to try to figure out how to bring energy efficiency solutions to multifamily buildings where you have mixed incomes, some people who are low income and some people who have higher incomes. And how do you provide services in a situation like that? It's not just like, here's the low-income program rolling up to the front door, prepared to install energy efficiency for free, but it's supposed to only go into the homes of qualifying low-income tenants or occupants, and here they are in a building of 20 or 30 or 100 units. How do you handle that? So we're going to need to give it more attention. I think the decision is going to require a very fast-paced consultant study to pull together a lot of disparate information, not just on energy, but on housing ownership and housing subsidies and the role of local governments and nonprofit organizations and how do we tackle this market. And I think a lot of you in the room probably have some great insight and experience, and I invite you to contribute it in the methods that we'll have available for that kind of stakeholder engagement. Then I want to finish by just commenting on the Energy Upgrade California program, the whole house retrofit program that was a sort of an amazing collaboration between state government, local government, utilities, contractors, HERS raters, and a myriad of folks who tried to take advantage of the stimulus money that was available for the last couple of years and launch this whole house retrofit program in California. And number one, the PUC has made a commitment like we did with the solar program, to a 10-year commitment to mobilizing whole house retrofits in a strategy that has a 10-year strategy and not just a 2 or 3 year look. So I think that's a major commitment. Secondly, we're going to continue to reinforce the importance of performance, not just the contractors sell stuff, but it's getting installed in a way that it's producing the benefits that we're all expecting. And one way of trying to ensure quality and performance is by requiring building permits and contractors to certify that they have pulled permits. So I think for those of you who are in local government, this is both good news and challenging news. The good news is that we're looking to local governments to try to ensure quality, and the challenge of training building inspectors to understand what's really relevant from not just whether something is installed for health and safety or seismic standards, but to actually ensure energy performance. So that will be something that I think you'll all be hearing about through the training and education programs and the codes and standards compliance efforts that the utilities have proposed and some of the local government partnerships have talked about. So I just want to leave with the thought that whole house retrofit, I think, is the gold standard for what we want to accomplish. But realistically, not all residential homeowners and occupants are ready to retrofit their whole house on one fell swoop. So I think the program is going to need to embrace some approaches to incremental improvements that people make at the right times in the life cycle of their families and their homes. And so you may replace a furnace or an air conditioning system when it breaks down, not necessarily when you're deciding to weatherize the building shell or when you're undertaking some other measures. So I think we're going to need to get creative in allowing the mechanism to work in a way that sort of matches what people really do and how they really make investment choices and how much money they're really prepared to spend at any one time. But we would love to shoot for the gold standard of, a major retrofit getting, 25, 30% savings or 40%. And the financing tools, once they're up and running, I think will help make it more palatable to do that. But in the meantime, we need to be capturing every single opportunity. 800,000 furnaces and air conditioners a year in California being replaced. We need to take advantage of that natural turnover and make sure that a very high percentage of that is going for energy efficiency, at least in those solutions. So thanks for listening to me this morning. I appreciate being here. I'll be here the rest of the day in listening mode. And just rest assured that we're all trying to move this forward, not only for energy and climate reasons, but also for the jobs and the economic development that come along with it. Thank you.
So next we have Andrew McAllister. He was appointed by Governor Brown in May of this year to the California Energy Commission. He fills the economist member position on the commission. He has over 20 years of technical, programmatic, and policy experience in the fields of energy management, efficiency, and renewable generation. Before joining the commission, he worked at the California Center for Sustainable Energy for 6 years, most recently as Managing Director and Director of Policy and Strategy. And previously, he worked at NRCEA International Limited, at an energy consulting firm at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. He's published on various energy topics in academic, trade, and popular journals. And please welcome Andrew.
I'm going to reiterate or just say ditto, really, to a lot of the things that Jean said, because we're really, I think, in a unique moment at the agency level where really all of the commissioners pretty much to a person are on the same page with respect to what we have to do and not necessarily all the details of how we're going to get there, but very much a goodwill based collaboration to really practically get where we need to go. And that's one of the reasons that I really was excited to come to the Energy Commission, because not only have I been more or less in shoes like yours on the receiving end of state policy, but also I'm really committed to these issues, and the Energy Commission has access to a lot of the levers to make things happen and to set up the stage so that things can play out the way we want them to. So I'm going to talk briefly about some issues that are under the Energy Commission's jurisdiction and sort of highlight how we're moving forward and how those efforts are going to be coordinated with many of the things that you do, and definitely with the retrofit programs and other initiatives that are relevant here to energy efficiency more generally. And those are Title 24, the building efficiency standards, and Title 20, appliance efficiency standards, and AB 758, which is the statewide energy retrofit program legislation that was passed actually several years ago now, but with Nancy Skinner as the lead. But we're really just getting to the development and implementation of it. So that's going to be, I think, all of these are platforms for collaboration with the Commission, with the utilities, and with local government. It's nice to have this discussion to sort of begin to get us on the same page, make sure we're all engaged. So Title 24, we just, I don't know, many of you might know, we just passed, or we just approved, actually, at a business meeting in June, the latest 2013 Title 24 update. And it's huge. It's the most advanced in the country, absolutely, and possibly in the world. It definitely is a big step forward, roughly about 25% more aggressive than the previous standard. All cost-effective measures that, in fact, there were lots of cost-effective measures that were sort of negotiated out of it at the end, so there's still a lot of potential there that in future cycles we'll be getting to. But it was, I think it's very exciting. It was the process that led up to this update was uniquely collaborative. I think there was very little sort of bad feeling in the industry and all the stakeholders. The BIA, the Building Industries Association, was on board with it at the end. It was very good process, and I think one that really created a consensus that the stakeholders there are on board with getting it done. So again, I'll reiterate what Gene said, that a lot of the enforcement and the making sure it happens is on the local government level. That's a jurisdiction that only you have, that only the local governments have, and that's really important to acknowledge and make sure that it doesn't cause too much heartburn, and that with the right training and et cetera, the building code officials and inspectors are all up to date and able to do that job. So the enforcement issues are, I think, huge, really front and center from my perspective. 90% of the HVAC systems out there are unpermitted, most likely. You have a lot of reticence in the building contractor community, and frankly, the citizenry that doesn't really understand that this is the law, and it is. So I think there's a delicate balance we have to strike in that, but obviously we want to move towards getting the savings that are on paper in reality. So the same afternoon, in the morning we approved the Title 24 standards, and in the same afternoon we approved a new power plant. So the trade-off really, this was in my first few weeks in the commission, and it really is a stark trade-off. Those are the decisions that we have to make, and nobody wants a power plant in their backyard or front yard and community. I mean, come on. But one of the reasons the commission exists is to weigh the social benefit of the social need to have reliable, affordable power, and figure out different ways to get there, right? So there's an overarching social need that supersedes, in some cases, individual communities, and that's something that just gets you right there. And so these Faustian bargains that we have to strike are not pleasant, and energy efficiency is just a way that we can minimize that dynamic. So I'm now, just to let everybody know, I'm the lead commissioner at the Energy Commission on energy efficiency, so I'm really excited about that. And I think helping the commission. I didn't pay anybody to do that. But energy efficiency is something I've been involved in my whole career, and I'm really committed to. And I think understanding the local government perspective and the contractor perspective and the customer perspective is really essential to getting it right. You know, that standards and power plants are one thing, right? We have the authority, we can impose that authority. It's got a social goal that's justifiable. But when you're talking about interfacing with markets like a retrofit, like a voluntary program, where you need a customer to choose to do something, that's a very different beast. And you know, that's where we are with the retrofit and new construction trades. And so I think that gives the Energy Commission, I think, a challenge to really interface, I think, more effectively, honestly, with the stakeholders and local governments, and kind of be realistic about how markets work, and kind of you know, poke and prod where we can, but also work with the folks that are trying to make businesses out of this enterprise. So with Title 24, you know, and some of the HERS and the BEARS and some of the tools that that we develop and use in those processes, you know, we're trying to be much more friendly to not put up barriers, and to make it more sort of streamlined and cost effective, and more of a solution and less of a problem. So that's, you know, my commitment is to try to make that happen. So that's Title 24. Title 20, there are a number of interesting things going on. You all may, I'm not sure how much you follow the Title 20 appliance standards. It's not the most sexy endeavor in the world, but the energy savings are humongous. They really are. And since we have plug loads that are the fastest growing and arguably the largest component of energy use these days in our building stock, and Title 24 does not cover them, we have to attack those aggressively. So most recently, the televisions a couple years ago came in, and that was a big battle, you know, with the industry and stuff to get that done. But it's going to save massive amounts of energy. Going forward over the next 15 years, those standards are, just in California, going to save around a third of the TV energy. And if they go, if they're adopted nationwide, then that'll be another case where California's kind of led and gotten the federal government to sort of, you know, get into action. So that's a really important role that we play here in California, the Energy Commission on the standards front, but also the PUC and the other agencies on the program front and other areas, where we really do lead and people are looking at us. And other states can adopt our standards if they want, or they can adopt the federal standards. But a lot of states who have the same goals we have, they adopt California standards first, and that gets the federal government sort of in motion. Right now we're in an election year, and there's not likely to be a lot of appliance activity in Washington. Gina and I were just up at the Pacific Coast Collaborative talking about harmonization of appliance standards, and that's what you get when you get a bunch of government people in the room together. We talk about harmonization and appliance standards. But it was very exciting. There were late nights there, I tell you. However, if British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and California all are giving the same message to Washington, that's even more powerful than just California doing it alone. And so these collaborations are really important. So right now we're in the middle of a battery charger standard. I'm just really hitting the sexy topics here, I know. But again, everybody's got a cordless phone or a bunch of them in their house. Everybody's got power tools. A lot of these things are plugged in all the time. Batteries, depending on the chemistry, can take overcharge. They sit there, they're hot all the time. The manufacturers don't really have an incentive to optimize those chargers. So there's a market failure that's fairly easy to fix, actually. It's not a high cost set of changes to make. So we're pushing forward on the battery charger standard. That's also going to save a lot of energy. And then the next round of Title 20, we are looking at doing set-top boxes. I don't know how many of you have cable or dish or one of these things where you got a set-top box on there that's always on. They are getting a little bit more efficient, but they still use a lot of energy. And so working, this time we're approaching it a little bit different, where we're encouraging discussions among stakeholders, among advocacy groups and industry to try to work out those, the issues. They're highly technical issues. It's a very diverse and fast-moving marketplace. And so, a big hammer or standard might not be the best solution. So we're encouraging them to come up with voluntary standards, and hopefully they can come up with ones that have teeth and that are enforceable and robust and all that good stuff. So we're not abdicating by any means, but we're hoping that those solutions can come forward. So there's going to be another set of requests for information and getting information from the industry. Largely, it's electronics we're talking about right now, but computers, displays, set-top boxes, gaming consoles use a huge amount of energy. So any of you with teenagers, I'm sure you can relate to how much energy goes into the gaming console. Electricity I'm talking about. So that's pretty exciting. I think that complements well Title 24, and it's a really interesting conversation actually between jurisdictions at the federal and state level. So that's item 2. Item 3 is AB 758, and I'll just give you a broad brush of what's happening with that. So it was passed in 2009, Nancy Skinner's bill. And then the stimulus came along, and everything else got put on the back burner pretty much. And we took advantage. At that point, I was not at the commission. I was on the receiving end with many of you of the ARA funds. So the commission really saw it as an opportunity to use the ARA programs to get a bunch of experience about what would work in retrofits. And so a lot of there's a lot of spaghetti thrown at the wall to see what stuck. And so we've learned a ton, and all of you have learned a lot. I think everybody who's anybody on retrofits has learned a lot from that process on everything from the technical stuff, all the different sectors of buildings, the financing for sure. The PACE debacle really, I think, impacted all of us negatively on that front. But it did stimulate a lot of really creative people, many of whom are here in the room, to think about what's going to work. And I think that's the goal with 758 as we go forward, is to really figure out what worked. I think we have a good idea. So, but we have a 2-step process. The first is a scoping plan, which is relatively high level. It's being developed right now. We're brushing it up and trying to make it as practical as possible. We're going to have some workshops starting in August to get feedback on that scoping plan. And then that then evolves into an action plan that will be obviously action-oriented, will be as sort of practical and implementable as possible. We are working directly with the PUC on figuring out how to make it most relevant for the next cycle of an energy efficiency program. So we're not talking about the 2013-14, but rather the 15-17 or 15-18, whatever it ends up being. So I really I can't emphasize enough the collaboration that's going on all of the fronts I've talked about. The investor-owned utilities and the PUC are really central for supporting the appliance standards development that we do. Ratepayers pay for a lot of that, and it also gets a lot of savings. It's very cost-effective savings because it's not that much money for the ratepayers, but it does over time really generate a lot of savings. And so again, I would say the challenge at the local government level is to find resources to help enforce and do the stuff on the ground that needs to be done. It's not just about marketing and outreach. It actually is about implementation at a very real level for staff at a local jurisdiction. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well. I guess I'll stop there. I've kind of thrown those 3 big issues are the ones that I'm thinking about right now. They all involve local government. I really hope that. I know that many of you and the LGSEC, for example, and other local government entities will be participating, and I'll try to make sure of that in the workshops and the hearings around AB 758, and really want that input because we need we need all the hard-won nuts and bolts knowledge that we can get to make sure that we're not asking the marketplace to do something that it doesn't want to do or that it can't do. And as the local as the ones with the relationships with your businesses and your citizens, I think it's really important, and also on the hook for implementing a lot of this stuff. I think it's really important that local government participates along with the investor-owned utilities and the agencies and other stakeholders. So again, I'm really excited to be in my new role. It was definitely hard to leave CCSC. I see Charlie over there. I see some other folks that we worked with through the years. But I know there's so much good work going on. It gives me a lot of faith, and at the local government level, it's great to see. So I'm hoping to get around and talk to many of you during the day. So thanks very much.
So Andrew, all of us who know you from your work at CCSE are so glad you're at the Energy Commission as a commissioner right now. So we're really pleased with that. Also, what you were talking about and what Jean was talking about reminds me of a slide that I always put in all of my presentations. So if you've seen one of my presentations, you'll remember this slide. But it shows the per capita energy or electricity use in California from about 1972 to 2010 or whenever it was done. Being relatively flat all the way across those decades, but everywhere else in the country it's gone up by 50% per capita. And so that's based on the work the Energy Commission does with Title 24 and Title 20, and the work that the PUC does with the utilities on doing all these effective energy efficiency programs. So it's really, really good. Okay. Next we have Ryan McCarthy, and Ryan's the only person I don't know up here from before today. He's a senior policy advisor to the chair of the California Air Resources Board. And previously, he was the chief writer of a strategic plan for plug-in electric vehicles in California and a science and technology policy fellow in the office of the California Assembly member Wilmer Amina Carter. Ryan received his master's and doctorate degrees in civil and environmental engineering from UC Davis and a bachelor's degree in structural engineering from UC San Diego. So please welcome Ryan McCarthy.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. You guys don't need me to tell you how great you are and how important the work you do is, but I will anyways. I'm excited for this workshop, and I think that I haven't been involved in too many local government meetings like this, but the format of this workshop, as well as the composition of you all being here, the practitioners who really implement the policies and the visions and reach out to people, I think will ultimately be very fruitful, and I'm excited to be here. Just as we at the state level sort of hope and expect that our grand policy visions expand to other states, to the national and sometimes even international level, I think it's worth recognizing the leadership at the local level that enables us to do what we do at the state level, in which ultimately itself percolates up to broader scales. What you do has broader impact than just your local community, and I think that's important to recognize. This is especially the case for energy efficiency. If you take the PACE program, that's obviously a great example, but that's local leadership in California just within the last decade who sprouted this idea for how we can get an effective financing mechanism for energy efficiency and clean energy projects. It quickly expanded to other cities in California, and ultimately the state of California adopted measures that would facilitate this on a broader level. Shortly after that, many other states followed suit, and then we probably all know what happened, and bickering siblings Franny and Freddie have since put the kibosh on things, at least temporarily. But that is an example of real local leadership that has had a profound impact just over the course of 7 years or so. We do hope and expect that the issue will be resolved and PACE will be able to move forward again as a financing mechanism, but we also take comfort in the leadership at the state level, at the PUC, the CEC, and certainly the leadership at utilities and local governments to continue coming up with new innovative financing mechanisms, as well as outreach and other strategies to get energy efficiency retrofits and clean energy upgrades made at the local level and with private money. So we hope that your new programs, the items that we'll discuss today and have already been discussed, ultimately complement rather than replace PACE financing, but we can take comfort knowing that the leadership is there to achieve our goals. At the state level, our innovative leadership, I think, can be encapsulated largely in AB 32, which requires the state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. AB 32 encompasses 20 plus measures that aren't just at ARB, but throughout government, including the Renewable Portfolio Standard, including efficiency measures, including efficiency for vehicles and clean fuels. And together, these measures are all embodied in what's known as a scoping plan at ARB. The AB 32 scoping plan outlines California's path to, one potential path to the 2020 target. In terms of energy efficiency, the scoping plan includes a number of measures: building efficiency, appliance efficiency, combined heat and power. I don't know how that actually gets categorized, but let's call it efficiency. And then solar water heating, which we also heard about this morning. And together, these measures are expected to reduce emissions by about 17 million metric tons by 2020, or in 2020. And for context, we expect, compared to business as usual, to the target for 2020 to have to reduce 80 million tons, so that's about 20% of the target. So energy efficiency is certainly an imperative part of AB 32 and achieving the goals as dictated by the legislature. But obviously we know we have to push efficiency, not just because AB 32 is an overarching target, but because we need to push efficiency in all that we do if we want to not only meet our environmental and energy goals, but also just to maintain productivity and competitiveness in California and to build a resilient and robust economy for our businesses and residents. And I think that's why, again, just to say how great you all are, why it's so important, these types of discussions and the PUC's Energy Efficiency Strategic Plan and a number of other efforts that aren't necessarily dictated by, AB 32 or any other specific greenhouse gas or energy goal, but just to push these, push energy efficiency as sort of a new standard of business, a new standard operating procedure. So, of course, a key element of AB 32 that is really imperative to make sure that we do meet that target and do so at the lowest possible cost is the cap and trade program. And I'll discuss that a little bit here. Forgive me if I go into the weeds a little bit, but I think it's important to understand how cap and trade works. First, just for a scope, cap and trade, again, is one of these 20-plus measures in the scoping plan. It's only one of 20-plus, so it's not solely responsible for our emissions reductions that we need, but it does make sure that we meet that target. Our estimates are that cap and trade will probably reduce emissions by about 18 million tons by 2020, so about the same scope, maybe about 20% of emissions reductions will come through cap and trade. But that could be more or less depending on the efficacy, I should say, of other measures, as well as voluntary and other market actions that could separately reduce emissions or potentially increase emissions, in which case cap and trade would have to do more. Cap and trade covers roughly 600 facilities in California, which together account for about 350 businesses. These are facilities with emissions of at least 25,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent every year. Those with smaller emissions footprints, 10,000 tons, have to report, but they do not have to comply with the regulation. The capped entities are power plants, refineries, large industry with these high level of emissions. They are included in the program, which launches next year. In 2015, transportation fuels as well as natural gas for commercial and residential buildings will also be included in the program. The capped entities comply by submitting a number of allowances or offsets. This is where things really get jargony, but that match their emissions. So each allowance accounts for 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide, and at the end of a compliance period, which may be 2 or 3 years, you have to submit the same amount of allowances as you emitted carbon dioxide. At first, when the program kicks off next year, we will give out the vast majority of allowances for free to entities to minimize costs to them. Probably about 90% of the allowances will be freely allocated to businesses and industries. Over time, especially when transportation fuels come into the cap. More and more allowances will be auctioned on the open market, which is what the other 10% currently will be. Offsets are emissions from non-covered entities. So the cap and trade program, those 600 facilities or so account for about 85% of California's emissions. The other 15% can play in the market through offset protocols, at least if an offset protocol that affects them is approved by the board. Offsets can satisfy up to 8% of any entity's emissions. And the board has approved so far 4 offset protocols. These are subject to very stringent requirements. At the Air Resources Board, we want to make sure that these are real, that these are additional to to emissions reductions that would otherwise happen. And we have to be able to count them. They have to be permanent. We have to be able to verify them. So there's a number of very strict criteria that we hold offsets to. We have approved 4 protocols thus far, dealing with forestry, urban forestry, ozone depleting substances, which is destruction of high greenhouse gas potential gases, and then dairy digesters, destroying methane at livestock facilities. Staff has also proposed to begin a public rulemaking on 2 other protocols, which would deal with rice cultivation and destruction of methane at coal mines. So the revenue from the allowances that are auctioned, which everybody is very interested in right now, and which the senator this morning mentioned is in the current governor's budget, or was included in the budget. Revenue is going to, there's sort of a tricky nuance. There's 2 separate pools of revenue and sort of caps and trading mechanisms. One is the utilities. The electric utilities are separate. They receive all their allowances for free. They have to auction them, and then they have to return the value that they receive for the benefit of electricity ratepayers, which will be guided by the Public Utilities Commission as well as the legislature to the extent they want to. That is separate from revenue that will come from auctioning to the other industrial facilities and in 2015 from fuels. That revenue or that value accrues to the state, which will be appropriated by the legislature through the budget making process. Both pots of money, of potential money, are relatively similar in size right now. If carbon trades at $10 to $20 a ton, which the futures markets have largely been in that range over the past few years, that would be about $1 to $2 billion for the public utilities portion, or for the utility portion, and about $500 million to $1 billion in the other portion that the state appropriates. When fuels are added, the state portion of that would be about five times larger than the $500 to $1 billion. So there's a lot of obviously interest in what this revenue can be used for. There's been some discussion. Obviously, there's a couple of bills in the legislature that propose to deal with this. Ultimately, I think it's an opportunity to reinvest in our economy and really begin to transform the way that California does business, to make sure that we aren't only getting incremental improvements, but that we're setting ourselves up for very low carbon, very efficient economy in the future. But I do want to say that the goal of the cap and trade program is not to raise revenue for the state, but rather to place a value on carbon dioxide emissions that really equates to a value on future economic opportunity and resiliency and sustainability in our economy. And just by valuing emissions, which embody future opportunity, is really what the point of a cap and trade program is, as well as an auction to get at that value. So reinvesting the revenue is an opportunity, but it's not, the revenue itself is not really the priority. We are in the process of really kicking off this program. In November, we will have our first auction. And then in 2013, entities have to begin complying with the program. And as we begin finalizing our preparations to launch the market, we are doing everything we can to make sure that we have the most robust, most exemplary cap and trade program that the world has seen and that we can possibly do. We have a number of efforts as well as rules in place to make sure that this is a very secure, transparent, and robust, again, to abuse the word, market. These include purchase and holding limits to limit market power, registration requirements, and a very robust, again, tracking system that makes sure that we understand the chain of custody throughout the process of when an allowance or offset is created and transferred, and maybe transferred again, to understand who owns it and who is responsible for it. In August, we're going to have a full-fledged practice auction where we will simulate everything in real time that we expect to happen during the auction in November, and we're inviting all of the 350 or so businesses and entities in the CAP to participate in that. We are retaining an independent market monitor to watch the market and make sure that nothing fishy is going on. And we have carefully studied, as was mentioned earlier today as well, past experiences in the Northeast with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative program, as well as in Europe. Learned from their experiences, from both their successes as well as some stumbles, and are confident that we have a program that will be the most, exemplary. This may be a bad joke, but I'm going to go for it anyways. But people talk about the belt and suspenders approach, and we are keen on going even beyond belt and suspenders. And I don't know what that is, but it might be belt, suspenders, and skinny jeans or something. So I don't know how that, I just came up with that now. I don't know what that is. I was trying to come up with what the third thing is. I think people have said belt and 2 sets of suspenders or something, but I thought we could do better. Anyway, so AB 32 is not just about ARB. It's not just about the cap and trade program. Again, it's all these measures, and it's activities at the Public Utilities Commission, at the Energy Commission, and throughout state government. I've only been in state government officially for a few years, but it is my sense that the agencies, as well as the administration, are working together like they never have before. I think there's a great amount of collaboration at the state level among agencies, a great amount of alignment among our priorities, and the principals of each agency, as well as the governor's office and the governor himself, have really come together around the idea that reducing greenhouse gas emissions is our priority when it comes to environmental and energy, and to an extent economic policy. And so every activity at the state level, or at least in the, I shouldn't say every, but many of the activities at the state level and among the energy agencies are really focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I guess one other priority along these lines are electric vehicles, and I just want to implement a little plug here because local leadership is really, I think, imperative to push this market forward. Again, the administration is committed to this as a top priority, as is ARB, and I think many of the other energy agencies. And we really need local leadership to add visibility, to implement programs that get charging infrastructure into multi-unit dwellings and at workplaces, which are 2 of the key hurdles, which are really the agencies as well as the state plug-in electric vehicle collaborative are focused on right now, trying to overcome. And these, especially in the multi-unit dwellings, are really going to require local leadership. And I think there's a significant opportunity for the local districts, cities, municipalities to lead and push electric vehicles, which are going to be imperative for our energy, environmental, and economic future. But back to efficiency. So, of course, we know that everything begins with efficiency. This can be applied to all sectors. It is imperative for our greenhouse gas targets and for AB 32. And I think you know, we have the loading order for electricity, which says efficiency is the top priority, then renewable energy, then efficient fossil, and then the rest, which we shouldn't even be focusing on anymore. And you can really translate that to everything we do, and I think you guys do at the local level as well. That's the same for transportation, that's the same for planning, that's the same for buildings. And so that should really sort of drive, I think, our planning in the future. Am I all right on time?
We're getting close.
All right, I'm getting close. So one other activity that ARB, an exciting activity, I think, at ARB. So while driving greenhouse or reducing greenhouse gas emissions has sort of been elevated as this key driver at the state level, we cannot lose sight, nor are we losing sight of the other environmental and energy objectives that drive us and that have historically driven us. This is air quality, this is water quality, waste diversion. And at the Air Resources Board, we are now trying to, we always classify these things as co-benefits, whether it's an air quality target that we are, policy that we're trying to meet, then we would call greenhouse gas emissions co-benefits. And when we're talking about AB 32 and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we would call air pollution reductions co-benefits. But we're really trying to elevate that in our planning, to treat them as co-equal objectives and to make our planning processes and our thinking and our policies more efficient by capturing these co-equal goals. And so we recently, just last month in June at our board meeting, released a draft document called Vision for Clean Air, which is a framework for future planning, which is going to guide our future state implementation planning, which is plans for meeting the federal air quality requirements dealing with smog. It will also guide our updated scoping plan, which we will begin to update next year, as well as a freight strategy plan that we will begin undertaking next year. And this is an integrated planning framework that focuses on meeting both our air quality, both our longer-term air quality and our longer-term climate goals. And for scope, this is the requirements, the federal air quality requirements in the South Coast Basin in LA, as well as in the Central Valley, are very, very stringent, very real, and fast approaching. And we talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% in 2020 as our goal for climate stabilization and where we need to get. Our long-term climate goal. A similar and analogous goal for air quality emissions is to reduce emissions of NOx, the precursor to smog, by a similar amount, roughly, or a little more perhaps, but by 2030. And it's largely similar technologies that do this, not entirely similar technologies, but that 2030 requirement for air quality is going to be much more challenging than the 2050 goal. And you can sort of imagine a 2050 goal and just accelerate it 20 years, and that's what we need to do in many parts of the state to meet our federal requirements. So as we begin to plan for future climate and air quality goals, we just want to make sure that we're including both and that we make sure our strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions will also put us on the path to reduce smog emissions and vice versa. In developing that document, we worked very closely with local air districts and with the South Coast Air Quality Management District in particular, and that was a very effective coordination among the agencies and the local and state levels, and we hope that that continues moving forward and that we have a stronger relationship and interactions with the locals. So finally, I'll just close once again by saying how great you are. We need the cities to lead, we need utilities to lead, and we know that the cities will definitely lead, as you always have. Just a few weeks ago, we heard in Rio that existing policies in the 40 biggest cities in the world are going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 1 billion tons in 2030 compared to 2010 levels. So just for scope, that's 12 times more than what we're talking about in 2020 in California. So that is profound. That is existing policies. The cities will certainly do much more. We see a lot of very promising leadership by the cities, which is captured, I should say, in the Cool California Challenge, which I think we'll hear more about today. The Governor's Environmental and Economic Leadership Awards, there's a lot of very exciting things that come out of that as well that showcase the good work of cities as well as utilities and private entities. And finally, I'll just close by saying that, you know, we talk about innovation and policy, we talk about smarter policies, we talk about technology development, but ultimately the way we get that technology adoption or we implement those policies is through social innovation. And there's a lot of very interesting stuff coming out of the tech world on that, tech being, you know, the Silicon Valley types and developing apps. Utilities are doing a lot on that. I know SDG&E has announced a very compelling game that they have. And the cities do a lot. And ultimately, it's the cities who can reach out to the residents to make sure that these programs succeed and to, you know, share their leadership, demonstrate leadership to make sure that, you know, the residents get on board, consumers get on board, and help us to get where we need to go. So thank you very much.